where I think the opportunity is to find those sellers, as you've mentioned, that are very motivated, that have to do something. And for those first time home buyers to go in and get a really good deal right now. It's going to require patience. It's going to require a good agent. But I believe now for first time home buyers, it's a really good time to get what you want, right? If you can be patient enough to find it.
Alrighty, folks, we're going to take a look at Southern California, specifically Orange County, and we're going to ask ourselves what is actually happening in the housing market. Yesterday, we got existing home sales for the country, which was up very slightly at 4.03 annualized. We got new home sales this morning, which were a disaster, down almost 100,000 from the month before. Pretty ugly. But let's talk about Orange County specifically. Adrian, what is going on? How are you?
Wow, what's going on, guys? Doing great. Interesting. So you mentioned that thing with the new builds. There's a spot in Murrieta. There are actually a couple of spots out there in Murrieta where builders just went wild. And there's some listings. We had a lot of call-ins from people in those areas that bought 2 years ago trying to sell their house. It's not happening. The builders are giving out major incentives for rate buy downs. The builders aren't moving. These listings aren't moving. I went into one area. It was absolutely wild, where I had a listing. The sales price was, the comp was $535 in our neighborhood. We came on at $529. Because of the new builds, we ended up selling at like $460. I want to say it was $469 or $479, which is drastically off from where the last comparable was in January.
Yeah, this is happening across the country where builders are kind of like mid-cycle. You're going to get this competition between the builder and existing home sales, right? From there, right? You get somebody who bought 2 years ago in phase 1 and now you're in phase 8. It's really hard to be an existing home buyer competing against a builder who has their own mortgage company and could buy rates down to sub 4. And I'm even hearing some sub 5. I'm hearing some go sub 4, 30-year fixed. It's a wild time.
And they're giving out huge incentives, right? And the sales price is not much different than what our list prices are for normal, for the normal sellers right down the street. And some of them bought 2.5 years ago, and the values just haven't gone up that much in that area. And so they weren't able to ride that. Like a little bit different. In Orange County, there was an area where they literally built, and God knows how long, they built these 3-story houses, but they overlooked the ocean. First phase made $1 million in a year. Whoever bought phase 1, the next year later, the comps were $1 million higher, right? But we're talking about a much different area. We're talking about beachfront versus, Murrieta. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, let's get into existing home sales because I think that's where a lot of the pain is. Again, I'm getting particularly excited in Las Vegas. We've got more active inventory now than we've had in years. We're seeing longer days on market, and all that screams to me is opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. But what's going on in Orange County?
Yeah, so Orange County's been interesting. What's interesting is the amount of pending transactions. So when we look at the amount of pending transactions, let's see here, it's 1,614, where there were 1,615 sales last year. So we're only a sale off, but the difference is the inventory. The inventory is the highest we've ever seen it, right? The active inventory in the past, and I'm reading off of Stephen Thomas, guys, so giving you some, direct info. I'm not making this stuff up. He sits here for hours and just it's called Reports on Housing, if you want to know. But in the last couple of weeks, it increased by 249 homes, up 5%. Now sits at 4,900, which is the highest level since June of 2020.
Woo!
Which is wild. So we're seeing the highest inventory than we've ever had since 2020.
And you got to remember 2020, we shut the country down, especially in California, right? There was a time where you couldn't go see housing. So to get back to those numbers is wild.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then when you look at demand, if I just look at numbers, when it looks at, current demand, our demand is anywhere between that 0 to 1.25 mark, 1.25. And when you look at the 0 to 1.25 mark, there's not a lot of houses for sale, right? That's what's interesting. It's the above 2, that 2.5 to 4, the 4 million to 6. I mean, you're looking at 715 days for days on market for anything over 6 mil.
That's 2 years, folks, just in case you couldn't do the math quickly. It's just about 2 years. You want to sell a $7 million home, wait, you got to be prepared to list it for 2 years. But this is why I think the housing market is broken across the country. I think Orange County is just another great example. Anything that's below the median, that's quick and clean, sells. There's just no inventory, and that's where the demand is. But you go 2x the median, which puts you 2.5 million in your area. It's just going to stack and stack and stack. That's just where we are in this market.
Yep. And it's interesting because when you look at still the days on market on average from anything between a 0 to 1.5, it's still on average 75 days.
Wow.
Because of those wishful sellers, right? Because of those sellers that are out there, and we see them, right? We see them, but anything that comes onto the market that is somewhat, within striking distance, it's selling pretty quickly.
Well, this is something I'm starting to tell real estate agents. I've actually said this in a while, but I'm telling agents now, if you get a seller that wants to come on and they have 2022 wish pricing and they're not going to budge, don't take that listing. You're just going to waste money.
Right. 100%.
No, I mean, that's,
they're not. You're going to look down. It's going to even houses that we have on the market below market value right now are still sitting. It's crazy. We had a property in Nuevo. It was on the market, 425. Neighbors sold 455, 300 square feet less. That house should have flew. It has yet to sell. It's been on the market for 72 days.
So what do you think this means? Let's talk about the low end. Let's talk about that house. Is it because that house is probably going to go to a first-time home buyer, I'm guessing. Is that fair?
Yes.
So think about being a first-time home buyer with what's going on, right? We've got obviously this tariff kerfuffle. We've got poor consumer sentiment. We had a threat of World War III, maybe still existing. And I got to tell you, I don't know why a buyer would sign up for anything right now. They're just like, I'm going to stay put. I'm going to keep renting. I'm going to live with my parents, whatever it is. There's just no compelling event to write that offer.
Yeah, and unless they're 100%, I need to buy today, we're not, we're just not seeing the offers. We're having no choice but to just go with whatever offer we get because we don't have 3 or 4 offers anymore. And you guys, I'm talking about houses that we price well below market value. Well, we're still not. We're seeing it from the flippers, of course, right? We're seeing it from, the wholesalers throwing us random offers, but from actual first-time home buyers, no. And if they are, they're asking for the world, right? They're like, hey, okay, if I'm going to do this, you're doing all the repairs. You're paying for everything. Oh, and by the way, I'm also getting 10K in closing costs back. So where I think the opportunity is to find those sellers, as you've mentioned, that are very motivated, that have to do something. And for those first-time home buyers to go in and get a really good deal right now. It's going to require patience. It's going to require a good agent. But I believe now for first-time home buyers, it's a really good time to get what you want, right? If you can be patient enough to find it. And then to go even deeper, I think it's going to be even better the longer this waits out. Because if this goes all year, in November, in October, people are going to start getting very desperate. And that's when we're going to see, as you know, major price reductions. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the next few months pan out. But my question to you is what I saw on Instagram last night is the feds are talking about, and who knows if this is just a created meme, feds are talking about lowering rates going into July. What is your thoughts on that? And what's your take?
So this is a really important question, especially for housing. So there are 2 Fed presidents, Michelle Bowman and Christopher Waller, who are openly calling for July rate cuts. Now, there are equally, there's 8 or 9 Fed presidents who come out and said basically too soon. But I think the chances of a July rate cut are not 0. They're not great. But if you go to the next meeting, September, I think your chances of getting a rate cut are going way up. And I actually went as far in a video last week saying that it's not impossible to get an emergency rate cut in August because there's no Fed meeting in August, but they have this thing called Jackson Hole where they all get together and talk. If we can get through June and July with no inflation, because that's what Powell's waiting for. He thinks summer inflation's going to go sky high. You could get an emergency rate cut in August, and if it's an emergency cut, it'll be a half. And the question you're really asking me is, when do mortgage rates fall? That's what you're really asking me. And there's a chance that mortgage rates are sub 6%. We're talking 5.99, 5.95, so high fives, but has a 5 handle on it. Sometime this year, there's absolutely a chance that will be lower rates and margin compression, because the housing market is dying right now. It's just dying. And at some point, you're going to have banks compete for business, because right now the spread from a historical average of 185 basis points is still 260 or 265. So there's more margin that can be compressed there. And, we get past this uncertainty from tariffs and uncertainty from World War III. You could see, the short end or the 10-year note fall. So I think what you're asking me is, could we see mortgage rates sub 6 this year? The chances are yes. I would probably give you, today on June 25th, 30% chance they're sub 6, maybe 35. But, if you'd have asked me a month ago, my answer would have been 0.
Right. So right. And I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do think it's setting up. I mean, you've got, you have President Trump saying the Fed should be 250 basis points lower. You have Trump correctly pointing out that Powell cut under Biden, but hasn't cut for him. The U.S. is sitting at 4.25, while the EU is cut like 11 times. So there's a lot of momentum, I think, building for rate cuts.
And if we did go down 0.5%, do you think that turns back on the market? Do you think we have a major market change?
I think I've said for a while that I actually expect the fall market to surprise people. I think we've got to get through the summer of uncertainty. We've got to get through the summer of inflation scare. But we get into September, October, and we get a 5.99 mortgage rate. I believe demand is going to come flying off the sidelines. That's what I think.
Which then pushes into what you've said at the beginning of the year about 2026 being momentum. It
just builds. We got to get through the summer. It's all about surviving the summer. These numbers that you have here are going to get worse, not better, for the next 60 days. But then the question is, okay, because if Orange County's feeling this, the entire country is feeling it to some extent.
100%.
And 60 days from now, Powell and his cronies are going to say, okay, uncle, we can't, auto sales are down, housing sales are down, we have negative GDP growth. Spur the economy with rate cuts. You have this big, beautiful bill with tax reductions and, deregulation. And we could really start some momentum in Q4, and that'll just carry through 26.
I'm optimistic that happens, because I'm optimistic it happens. I mean, don't get me wrong. For the people we talk to on a daily basis, right? Those putting in the work, you guys, there's great deals to be done right now, right? Right now during the summer, for all of you, I want to encourage all of you, like, get out there, make all the calls, send all the texts. They're going to send the mailers, because they're going to fall, right? Especially when this thing turns on, there are people that are holding on to stacks of people just waiting to call them, right? So make sure you're there when they call. I think that's like the biggest thing I see, right? It's like, okay, how do we get ahead of this? How do we get ahead of this? Contact as many people, make sure they know who you are. So when that turns, you're calling them again and getting appointments and getting contracts signed.
Yeah. At the end of the day, folks, I do think July and August are going to be not very pleasant for folks in the housing industry. Again, I've said all year, 2025 is going to suck. It's going to be the worst year, but 2026 is almost here. And I do think momentum starts in Q4 of 2025, but a lot of that activity shows up next year. So, buckle up, couple more months. We're almost through the worst of it. It's, the only way to get through hell is keep going. So let's get through the next 2 months.
Love it. Love your insight, Zuber.
Thank you, buddy. How can people follow you?
Instagram, guys, at Adrian Hernandez. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the One Rental at a Time.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Appreciate you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say,